We've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet before we go ahead and get started. And oh my goodness, we've got a whole nother one of these things to go through. Well, I'm glad you're here with me. We're going to be able to squeeze it by together, but let's make sure the stream is working, and it looks like it is. So that means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we are talking about the January 6th Select Committee, the fake hearings that continue on. Remember this guy who almost stole America? Well, we are now getting to the bottom of this nefariousness. And we're on day 5 of these hearings, Netflix limited series. You know, we've been calling them sort of a high school pep rally. But today more felt like a book report kind of a thing. Liz Cheney was like, I researched this, and I've also got this to share with you. And it was a big litany. And this was actually the hearing that we skipped over last week. Remember, actually, let's close some of this stuff up. So here's what's going on today. And if you want to follow along at home, you can. It's at j6mindmap.com. It'll take you to this mind map that is available online for free. And we've been spending a lot of time on this. And so today, let's just clean this up so we know what we're focused on. We're going to make sure we got nothing to update on the Oath Keepers, nothing on the J6 crimes. We did Bannon and Navarro yesterday, so we'll close them up, which means we've got really no criminal prosecutions to focus on today. We also, though, remember, we have the bingo card, which came over from C-SPAN Review. That's under the tools section. And the bingo card was really useful for when we were doing this live, but we are going to be playing several clips here today of today's insurrection hearing. And so, of course, if you are playing along at home, you can grab the bingo card at j6mindmap.com and follow along at home, you know, with your kids or family, or if you invite your family over for the hearings or whatever, then you can certainly make sure you find it a little bit more enjoyable. But really, most of our time is going on to this other wing, the other section here. And we are now on hearing number 5. Recall that we dealt with the first one, the season premiere. We'll close that up. We dealt with episode number 2, the big lie. This is where we heard from these three people. This was all about the election process and the Giuliani videotapes and all that. So we'll close episode 2 up. We had on June 16th, episode number 4. And you're saying, wait a minute, Rob, we skipped over a whole episode. Well, that's right. That's because the hearing that took place today was supposed to happen some time ago. And there was a little bit of a scheduling kerfuffle or something happened or whatever. And so they had to move it around. And so this is really episode number 5, but it's sort of, it's really kind of episode 3. They had episode 3 prepared and they had to postpone it and then they brought it back. And here we are. But remember, before that, we had episode number 4, which was the last one yesterday or earlier this week. Rusty Bowers, Lady Freeman, Shay Moss, Gabe Sterling. We had a lot of responses to that, and we'll get into some of the responses here today. But we'll close that one up as well. And you can see we've got a whole lot of stuff to get to that came out of the insurrection hearings that took place today. And this is where we're going to be spending most of our time. We do have some defenses that we'll point out, because remember what we're doing here largely is we're counter-programming this fake, illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee, because Republicans don't have an opportunity to speak. Nobody else from the GOP seems to be proffering forward any type of response of any weight of any sort. So we'll do some of that here. And we'll start back by zooming out and going up to the top and really dive into the hearing today. So get those bingo cards ready if this is something that you want to follow along at home and, torture yourself with. But here is what we've got. All right. Today it took place at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Wait, before I get there, remember that if you want to be a part of the show, place to do that is at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a live chat taking place there right now. Kelly Selnow's over there. B Specs in the house. John Q Simple's over there. JC the Music Man as well, all chatting away on our locals community. And I see here in our YouTube community, Stace on the cases here. Cool Guy 18,000 is a member. I'm grateful that you both are there. Great place to join and support the show at either one of these locations. Of course, our law firm is a good place to catch our legal team if you need help. And that is my advertisement of the show. Now, let's go into the hearings. As we saw today, Adam Kinzinger was going to be the person leading this. And because there are a total of 9 congressional representatives on this fake committee, they're taking turns. It's kind of like musical chairs. They're going around one after the other. And now it's Adam Kinzinger's turn. And Adam Kinzinger, we were speculating today that we may see tears from him. On the member morning video, we do a walk and talk in the mornings. There was a conversation that I was having about, were we going to see tears? Because we've seen crying Adam Kinzinger before, and he's getting pretty emotional over some of this J6 stuff, saying that, America was almost over. And we were almost in really, really big trouble there. And I didn't watch the full hearing, so I don't know if there were actually tears or not. And if you did watch the whole thing, then maybe you could see them and let me know if you were actually witnessing of any tears, but I don't know. But here is Adam Kinzinger. So he starts the show off. And again, most of this testimony is in the form of direct testimony, really from the congressional representatives themselves. They get out and they read from the teleprompter. It's like a big essay. It's just like a big narrative where they're just telling us what they're reporting on. And we get very little back and forth by the way of question of any of the witnesses. So Adam Kinzinger came out today, and part of his soliloquy, part of his narrative here, you can see it's 4 minutes long, and so we are going to have to go through it. Now, I know it's going to be painful, but we can do it. So let's just check it out. Here's Kinzinger. We're on episode 5 of this thing, and it sounds like this is going to go into July, and I'm not sure how much we're going to be able to take of it. If they continue this thing on like 2 a week indefinitely, it's like, how much more can we explore without asking any new questions? And we're going to see this today. We've talked about a lot of these counters and a lot of these defenses many times repeatedly. In fact, before we get into Kinzinger, let's do a quick recall on that. Down here at the bottom of our mind map at j6mindmap.com, if you go into the double standards section, remember yesterday we talked a lot about this gentleman. His name is Michael Tracy. He shared with us all of these screenshots of other people saying that putting pressure, electoral pressure on people is wholly justified. Here was one Twitter report, Jennifer Palmieri, saying, wonder if he knows that the Electoral College hasn't even met yet, right? Saying that Donald Trump hasn't won because there's still stuff that we can do to change the outcome of the election. She posted that on December 9, 2016. She's the campaign manager, somebody up at the upper level, advisor level for Hillary Clinton. And she's saying that after the election took place, that there's a possibility that the Electoral College can still grant a victory to Hillary Clinton. Okay. All over the place back then in 2016. Paul Krugman, somebody now, I don't follow him anymore, but somebody who is, I would guess, is screaming about insurrection, right? Back then he was saying, well, Trump was fundamentally illegitimate, even though he won. And so maybe we can, change the outcome of an election. Same story here from the New Republic. The Electoral College should do what it wants. We saw Steven Pinker, who wrote Enlightenment Now, saying the same thing. We had the same thing coming out from Michael Moore, right? This was a talking point in the entire Democratic Party. This is what they were all saying. They were all putting pressure on people like attorney generals and legislature and different individuals in different facets of the government to change the outcome. Watch.
I think there are people who are pushing very hard who think that because of some of the constitutional perils of the Emoluments Clause, because of the popular vote margin, because of a fundamental, they think, threat to liberal democracy, that electors should be persuaded and pressured on Monday to part with what their pledge is and vote against Donald Trump.
Yes, they absolutely should do that. Absolutely. I believe right now that there are electors. There are only
See?
38 of them who have a conscience or who are worried about a man who won't attend the daily security briefings, who we now know Russia was trying to help get elected.
Okay, all fake.
I mean, can you imagine if you or I had been running for office and they showed that the Iranians were somehow involved in helping you or me get elected? What would happen to...
All right, so you get the picture. But the point is, right, this was something where there was a lot of pressure. There were people like Steven Pinker and all sorts of Democrats like Michael Moore putting pressure via text messages, making death threats. CNN reported there were death threats on these electors, right? Here's somebody receiving death. There was pressure on attorney generals. There were lawsuits filed. Everybody was protesting. Okay, it was the end of the world because the Orange Cheeto, oh no, was going to walk into the White House, right? Everybody was melting down about it. Now, as we know, okay, that is going to be the subject of the hearing today. Kinzinger is going to be talking about this, and you can sort of, speculate about where the line of questioning will go in any proceeding just by looking at the witnesses. And here you can see these are all former attorney general people. Here it's acting Trump attorney general, acting deputy attorney general, and assistant attorney general in Trump's office of legal counsel. So this is saying that Donald Trump was putting pressure on government lawyers to do things to change the course of the outcome of the election. All right. Which is sort of, okay, we'll get there. Here is Adam Kinzinger now, who is going to open up the proceedings with this 4 minutes, and let's just brace ourselves. Oh my gosh, here it is.
My colleagues and I up here also take an oath.
Yeah.
Some of them failed to uphold theirs and instead chose to spread the big lie.
What's lie?
Days after the tragic events of January 6th, some of these same Republican members requested pardons in the waning days of the Trump administration. 5 days after the attack on the Capitol, Representative Mo Brooks sent the email on the screen now. As you see, he emailed the White House, quote, pursuant to a request from Matt Gaetz, requesting a pardon for Representative Gaetz, himself, and unnamed others. Witnesses told the Select Committee that the president considered offering pardons to a wide range of individuals connected to the president. Let's listen to some of that testimony.
All right, so this guy has been the subject of this hearing. He gave the committee so many good sound bites that he was trending all over Twitter. I forget what his name is. I think I took a screenshot of it somewhere. But he, it's at the tip of my tongue. Fleischman, I think, David Fleischman, something like that. He is somebody who is advising a lot of these other people. Okay, so he's sort of like, as all this was going on in the DOJ, Trump White House, Attorney General's office, so on and so forth, you started to see sort of like a bifurcation, a split between teams. You had people who were like, this is crazy, this is Trump nonsense, which is the vast majority of people. And then there's other people who were sort of, kind of in the middle, who were sort of being torn towards one direction. And then there were other people that were just like clearly in the Donald Trump camp, right? And there's conversations and interfacing between those three different buckets of individuals. And this guy was clearly in the sort of anti-Donald Trump, anything that's going on is bad and insurrectionary. And as we have talked about, this is a political question. This is a legal question. Lawyers are, and regularly do, have differing opinions, and sometimes they are strongly differing, right? That's the whole purpose of our system. We have an adversarial system. If every single lawyer agreed all the time and we all said, yeah, that's all crazy, right? Then our system would be pretty boring. Even stuff that is like well-settled law, okay, you file lawsuits and challenge it. Like, look what's going to happen with Roe versus Wade, right? They've been saying it's settled law for however long. Somebody came up with a new, lawsuit and a new challenge, and now it may look like it's changing. Okay, so you're always challenging that, right? How long was some of the worst precedents that we've ever had in this country good law until it wasn't bad law? You're always challenging. And a disagreement between lawyers is not evidence of guilt. It's not automatically evidence that somebody did something bad. It's just saying that we disagree about the modality or the mechanism by which we accomplish our goals. You may think that the law allows for this and even warrants an argument. I don't. I think it's totally shut down. Happens all the time. So it's not unusual, but they keep bringing him up because he gives them very strong, colorful language, and they need something, anything to make this exciting. And also, he has a cute panda behind him in the videos.
Was Representative Gaetz requesting a pardon?
Believe so. The general tone was, we may get prosecuted because we were defensive of the president's positions on these things.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But is that not exactly right? Let me rewind that a minute. Is that not exactly what has happened? Okay, Matt Gaetz, many other people, all the people that the Democrats are screaming about getting pardons, all could have used them, because what they were worried about the Democrats becoming political prosecutors, has all come true, has it not? Let's listen.
And was Representative Gaetz requesting a pardon?
Believe so. The general tone was, we may get prosecuted because we were defensive of, the president's positions on these things.
They are getting prosecuted.
The pardon that he was requesting, was as broad as you could describe. From the beginning, I remember he's from the beginning of time up until today.
Of course it would be.
All things.
Yeah.
He mentioned Nixon, and I said Nixon's.
Look at all these clips, right? They keep clipping, clip, change person. It's like a TV show.
Gaetz and Mr. Brooks, I know, have both advocated for there to be a blanket pardon for members involved in that meeting, and a handful of other members that weren't at the December 21st meeting as the preemptive pardons. Mr. Gaetz was personally pushing for a pardon, and he was doing so since early December. I'm not sure why. Mr. Gaetz had reached out to me to ask if he could have a meeting with Mr. Meadows about receiving a presidential pardon.
Did they all contact you?
Not all of them, but several of them did.
So you mentioned Mr. Gaetz, Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Biggs did. Mr. Jordan talked about congressional pardons, but he never asked me for one. It was more for an update on whether the White House.
They could have at least cleaned up the audio.
Mr. Gomer asked for one as well.
Okay, so she's going through the
Mr.
litany.
Perry asked for a pardon too. I'm sorry.
Everybody asked for pardons.
Did he contact you directly?
Yes, he did.
Did Marjorie Taylor Greene contact you?
No, she didn't contact me about it. I heard that she had asked White House Counsel's Office for a pardon from Mr. Philbin, but I didn't frequently communicate with Ms. Greene.
Are you aware of any conversations or communications regarding the possibility of giving Congressman Matt Gaetz a pardon?
I know he had asked for it, but I don't know if he ever received one or what happened with it.
Okay.
How do you know that Congressman Gaetz asked for a pardon?
He told me.
Tell us about that.
He told me he'd asked Meadows for a pardon.
Were you involved in or did you witness any conversations about the possibility of a blanket pardon for everyone involved in January 6th?
I had heard that mentioned. Yeah.
Do you know whether the president had any conversations about potentially pardoning any family members?
I know he had hinted at a blanket pardon for the January 6th thing for anybody, but I think he had for all the staff and everyone involved, not with January 6th, but just before he left office, I know he had talked about that.
Okay, so there. Okay, I guess amazing.
The only reason I know to ask for a pardon is because you think you've committed a crime.
Or you're afraid of corrupt little dictators like you, loser. They're concerned about people like you doing exactly what you're doing. Do you understand that? You have proven them 100% right. The pardon power was written into the Constitution because of people like you. Hello? Why do you think it exists in the first place? Gosh, these people are so ignorant. All right, so now that's going to be his position. They asked for pardons, therefore they're guilty. When really, I mean, the pardon request would have been an obvious request to make because of what everybody was screaming about, that they were going to go after every single Republican, right? And that everybody's going to be brought to justice for this. And now they're going after, Sean Hannity's text messages. And they're arresting people and, putting 72-year-old men in shackles on airport tarmacs. It's ridiculous what's going on. But the point is, right, they're going to make a big deal about this. They're going to say pardons, 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 pardons. And again, this would be like your lawyer, okay? If you talked with your lawyer about a potential outcome in a case somebody comes to my office and says, Rob, hey, you know, your office is amazing. rrlawaz.com, free case evaluations. We love to help good people charged with crimes in the state of Arizona. If somebody comes to our office and they say, Rob, I've got this very difficult felony charge involving a lot of complex issues. I need your help. Okay. And they sit down and they say, hey, let's brainstorm some issues. What types of arguments can you make? And I typically, in a real world, in reality, I say, here are our options. This option, this option, this option. We're filing a motion to dismiss on this basis, a motion to suppress evidence, and a motion to preclude this witness. Got it? Got it. Now, according to Adam Kinzinger, I shouldn't get those opportunities, right? I shouldn't get those opportunities to file a motion to dismiss or to preclude some evidence or to single out a witness for whatever. Because the only reason I would do that is because I know that we're guilty. I know my client's guilty. Otherwise, why would I do that? Why would I ask for a pardon unless somebody was guilty? Why would I file a motion to dismiss unless I knew they were guilty? Why would you hire a lawyer? Why would you invoke your right to remain silent? Why would you deny an officer to enter your home without a warrant? Unless you knew you were guilty. It's the worst argument ever. It's something that's so dumb. And they bring it up, you know, with defense attorneys and all this stuff. It's like, well, why don't you just talk to me? I mean, you would talk to me unless you have something to hide, right? Same argument. So the Congress people speculating about this little tyrant are completely justified, thoroughly exonerated, and Trump should have granted them pardons from what we can tell here, because they're the subject of an illegally constituted government inquiry from this fake select committee. All right, now you can see that Bloomberg Quick Take gave us this, and this was sort of trending all over Twitter. They said, look at these people. Matt Gaetz and Scott Perry and Andy Biggs and Louis Gohmert and Mo Brooks, all of these people, they sought pardons for themselves. Therefore, they're illegal criminals. They're illegal insurrectionists. But as I said, that's just not how this works, okay? You're allowed to explore your legal options in this country. You're allowed to prepare a defense against in my opinion, an anti-American, an anti-democratic illegal committee like the J6 committee. As I've said, you know, they think that they are fighting the Nazis here, and they are themselves the Nazis, right? They're making this excuse like they're going after the Trump MAGA insurrectionists. And what they are doing is trampling all over due process and equal protection, and they are violating the very foundational principles that are enshrined in the very letter of our Constitution. It's reprehensible. And now they're just gloating, and he says that we have to do this to protect democracy, right? You know, that's always the story. It's like the Patriot Act is going to protect America. No, it's not. You're a patriot if you support it. No, you're not. Here it goes on. Now, Matt Gaetz responded to this. And I haven't listened to this yet. I just sort of clipped it and threw it in here. He was on his podcast today, breaking Gaetz' response to the J6 committee. And like I said, haven't listened to it. Let's do it together.
Just moments ago, you appeared in front of the J6 committee, or they were talking about you.
That's right.
And all of your allegations of standing up for the election in 2020. And they played a soundbite.
January 6th. I'm joining with the fighters in the Congress, and we are going to object to electors from states that didn't run clean elections. Democracy is left undefended if we accept the result of a stolen election without fighting with every bit of vigor we can muster.
How do you respond to this? Is a clown show to begin with, but what's your response to that?
Well, the January 6th Unselect Committee just played remarks that I gave before January 6th, where I expressed my desire to object to electors that came from states where the law had changed at the last moment, where there were chain of custody questions over the ballots. And they used this to try to make the argument that there was some sort of unique and unprecedented pressure that members of Congress were putting on democracy. Here's my response. You know, the last president that was a Republican that got sworn in without Democrats objecting to their electors? George H.W. Bush. Okay, they objected to the state of Alabama when President Trump won it, and he won Alabama by over 40 percentage points, and Jim McGovern objected to that. So it has long been part of the history of Congress to use the process of objecting to electors so that you can ripen important questions and you can make points on principle. And that's what we sought to do, and we sought to introduce evidence. And unfortunately, our effort to use a legitimate constitutional process was interrupted by a riot. And that's not something we ever want to see. We want to be able to resolve our disputes with our words and with constitutional process. And I still have a lot of concerns about election integrity going forward. There was a great piece by Molly.
Yeah, notice his, and I want to be clear here for YouTube. My YouTube censor got mad at me over there. You know, they played a clip of Matt Gaetz there talking about the prior election that came from the J6 committee and here. And he's actually sort of not, he's actually kind of walking away from some of that language. If you listen to this, right, he's talking about them changing some of the electoral deadline dates, talking about some of the ballot collections, some of the rules got changed. And he's framing this in terms of election integrity. And he's saying that moving forward. And I can't tell if he's doing that for YouTube or what he's doing, but the language is different. Okay. The language that they played in that clip versus the language that he just used here, it is softer. And I just wanted to point that out. I'm not saying or implying that anything illegal or fraudulent happened in the 2020 election. All right. Take it easy over there. Take it easy, I said. All right. So let's get back to this.
Molly Hemingway in the Federalist today about different steps that Joe Biden was using to try to steal the 2022 midterms. And so we have to be vigilant. I will note that the member of Congress sort of quarterbacking the January 6th committee right now is Adam Kinzinger. And I remember Adam Kinzinger begging me to try to get Donald Trump to appoint him to be Secretary of the Air Force.
Wow.
So this is a whole lot of somebody who I think is very personally bitter over the fact that he wasn't selected for a position. Trust me, if Donald Trump would have selected Adam Kinzinger for Secretary of the Air Force, Adam Kinzinger was ready to drink Donald Trump's bathwater to make that happen.
Wow.
And now he's a bitter little man putting on a ridiculous show.
That's true. I didn't know that. All right. So little crying Adam Kinzinger wanted to be in the Trump administration, and now he got his little fifis hurt. So now he's unhappy about all this. And so I guess this is going to be his big last hurrah before he gets thrown out of Congress. All right. And so, look, we're going to get into the actual witnesses. Look, we've got several of them here. And then we're going to take a look at the reaction because Chuck Todd over at NBC, he got told the truth by this woman. And she said, you know, this is not going well for your side here, Chuck. So we'll get to that in a minute. But first, today, my friends, the big news of the day, Sean Penn. You remember him. Sean Penn, of course, was there at the January 6th Select Committee hearings. Because why wouldn't a Hollywood actor be at a fictional Hollywood scripted show? It makes total sense. In fact, I'm waiting for some other Hollywood stars to show up there. Maybe Will Smith will be there. I don't know. But here is Sean Penn. He went there. He went and attended. Look at this article over from whatever this is, the Los Angeles Times. Here they tell us that the Oscar winner, Sean Penn, attended the 5th day of the January 6th committee hearings on Thursday. He was in movies called Milk and Mystic River, and he won an Academy Award. Wow. And he is an outspoken individual who defended the U.S. Capitol. Oh, he sat with officers. Yeah, there it is. He sat with officers who defended the U.S. Capitol. Of course, he didn't defend the U.S. Capitol. And here's a photograph of him with one of those very officers. You can see him. Oh, that's beautiful. Remember, that's Michael Fanoni, that one weird officer who, you know, I'm not so sure that I really believe him, but he's got these different neck tattoos. Very interesting character. Sean Penn and the other officers just hanging out down there at the Capitol building, a perfectly reasonable, perfectly, you know, legitimate political operation. They're all there. So the House Select Committee moved into its second week of hearing after its year-long investigation, a lot longer than that here. Penn, 61, was seated next to former Washington Metro PD officer Daniel Hodges and Michael Fanoni. And did you know this about Michael Fanoni? Remember him? him right there, Officer Fanoni. Guess where he's working now? Oh, yeah. He's over here at CNN. He's a CNN contributor now, Michael Fanoni. So, so in the comments, somebody, Jill Kindle says, 2 actors, not just one. I'm just here to observe just as another citizen, he told reporters, according to CNN. And he said, quote, I think we all saw what happened on January 6th, and now we're looking to see if justice comes on the other side of it. Noting that he had been following the hearings, which is good. That means they've got at least somebody watching it. The hearings have been compared to the Watergate scandal. Earlier this week, Penn was among the A-list celebrities that Ukraine's Ministry of Defense thanked in a tweet. And we also know that that weirdo Ben Stiller also went over there and was fawning over Zelensky. He's like, gosh, you're my hero. I love you. You're an actor and you're a war hero. And I'm an actor and I want to be a war hero. I played that in a make-believe movie called Tropic Thunder. And I'd like to do it in real life. So these guys are just the weirdest. Okay, now that is what was going on. Fanoni was there, and here's a video. Now the media was sort of fawning over this. Here's a little video. I think we get a zoom in action. Yeah, there they are. Here's the action, live action today. Look at all these people with their laptops working really hard to document and chronicle this totally legitimate, perfectly legally constituted hearing, right? Oh, these two. Okay, so Associated Press gave us that article. And Sean Penn, as you can see, he was trending on Twitter this afternoon. A lot of people very excited about that. All right, that's the context. Now, we've got a witness, Jeffrey Rosen, and I've got just a couple, basically one short clip from all of these witnesses, just a few minutes each, just to spare us a little pain. This guy, Jeffrey Rosen, back during the Trump era, was the acting attorney general under Donald Trump. And he's talking about some of the pressure that was being placed upon them. And he was saying, you know, we were being asked to change our opinions, and we can't do that because of the law, and the facts don't match the law. And so he's going to give us a little bit of testimony that came out today. Let's listen.
Mr. Rosen, after Mr. Barr announced his resignation, did Donald Trump continue to demand that the Department of Justice investigate his claims of election fraud?
Yeah, and so for context, remember that Bill Barr was the prior attorney general, and he left. He resigned. He's like, I'm getting out of here. And so this guy steps in. He's the acting attorney general, and the question is really, you know, if Bill Barr resigned because he didn't want to be involved in this election integrity conversation anymore, what happened after you took over? I mean, you take his office, you sort of hop into his seat. What happens next?
Yes, he asserted that he thought the Justice Department had not done enough.
Thank you. From the time you took over from Attorney General Barr until January 3rd, how often did President Trump contact you or the department to push allegations of election fraud?
So between December 23rd and January 3rd, the president either called me or met with me virtually every day, with one or two exceptions like Christmas Day. And before that, because I had been announced that I would become the acting attorney general before the date I actually did, the president had asked that Rich Donoghue and I go over and meet with him, I believe, on December 15th as well.
A lot of meetings. Wow.
So after you...
It's busy. They're having there's a lot of work to do.
Had some of these meetings and conversations with the president. What things did the president raise with you?
So
he was unhappy with the outcome of the election, and he wanted me to investigate changing it.
An element of all of this was the president expressing his dissatisfaction that the Justice Department, in his view, had not done enough to investigate election fraud.
Wow, that's shocking.
But
we have not heard
at
that
different
before.
junctures, other topics came up at different intervals. So at one point, he had raised the question of having a special counsel for election fraud. At a number of points, he raised requests that I meet with his campaign counsel, Mr. Giuliani. At one point, he raised the whether the Justice Department would file a lawsuit in the Supreme Court. At At a couple of junctures, there were questions about making public statements or
Okay.
about holding a press conference.
Yeah, all different activities that you do when you're talking with your lawyer. You know, people come into our office. What are we going to do next time at the next court proceeding? This is what we're doing. What do we need to get? Get this in order. Send me these documents. We're going to prepare this. Go talk to your girlfriend. See what she has to say about it. All right. And we're going to figure it out. Right. That's what happens. They're asking about just regular stuff that goes on in government, talking specific. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again here. These are standard of care arguments. These are political question arguments. Donald Trump is allowed to investigate these things. Just like in our cases, we're allowed to investigate motions to dismiss and potential lines of cross-examination that might embarrass the government and might embarrass the prosecutors and might cause us a victory that results in what the government said allegedly was a criminal defendant going free. Okay, all of this happens all the time. There are criminal cases and criminal defendants that go free every day in this country because the government screws something up, and they wouldn't go free if their defense attorneys weren't fighting tooth and nail to get it done. So for Benny Thompson and for anybody else, like, these people are so hypocritical. Do you know how many conversations like this Benny Thompson has had with his lawyers and his staff? They're sitting here scolding Donald Trump for what sounds like, right, regular conversations with an acting attorney general, all legitimately within the purview of what happens in a legitimate government, and saying that's a problem. You can't do that. Liz Cheney, I have to guess, is on the phone with her lawyers once a month at least, if not more often than that, right? These people are all in the middle of election seasons.
One of the later junctures was this issue of sending a letter to state legislatures in Georgia or other states. And so there were different things raised at different parts of, or different intervals, with the common theme being his dissatisfaction about what the Justice Department had done to investigate election fraud.
Yeah.
I will say that the Justice Department declined all of those requests that I was just referencing because we did not think that they were appropriate based on the facts and the law as we understood them.
Yeah, okay, that's great. That's exactly how it works, right? Happens all the time. Lawyer, a defendant says, hey, Rob, you know, I'd like to, explore a different kind of motion to dismiss. You know what I mean? And I say, no, I don't know what you mean. Sounds like that could be a problem. That could be unethical. And they come and they say, well, what if I make it worth your while? And they say, we're going to try to, sneak this through. And how about I just twist the fact? Or what happens if this witness does this or this and all this stuff? And maybe we can just sneak this one right by. And the answer at that point is no, right? Because we have ethical obligations and ethical duties, and we reject those requests, just like what happened to the Department of Justice. A bunch of people said, no, can't do that, right? All legitimate. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to have conversations, investigate claims, say that's not reasonable. And I'm not even saying that it went that far, right? I'm not even saying that Donald Trump was implying anything illegal or any of that, because none of that has been codified. None of that has even been alleged as far as we can tell, right? Has there been a crime alleged? It's really hard to have conversations when we don't even know what the baseline standard is, right? We know that you can be charged with shoplifting when you steal the candy bar, but what are they trying to prove here? What is the charge? What is the conduct that we're measuring all of this against? We have no idea. No idea, right? Don't know if they're going to indict him for insurrection. Don't know if it's going to be seditious conspiracy. So all of this is right now is just lawyer conversating. It's just legal talk, which is totally allowed in this country, and it should be encouraged in this country. That's the whole point of the adversarial system. We don't have a functional adversarial system if it's not adversarial. If everybody just says, okay, whatever the prosecutor wants to do, I guess whatever the Department of Justice says, whatever the FBI agent says, whatever the police say, I mean, I guess there's nothing we can do. We're just defense lawyers. We just have to do whatever the prosecutor or whatever the government bureaucrat says. That's all we've got. All right, I guess we'll just lay over and just give up. The system would break apart. It has to be adversarial for that very reason. We're supposed to encourage, and you could do it friendly, right? There are prosecutors out there that, are very aggressive, and defense attorneys like us at our law firm, the R&R Law Group, links in the description below, who are very aggressive, and you can still be friendly when you're not working on cases. But prosecutors will want to come and kick your teeth in, and defense attorneys will want to do the same, right? And it's because our system is adversarial, and there are people in the legal system, some of the best lawyers ever, are the ones who want to go charging headfirst and take those strong issues and go tackle them, right? Same thing you want in a high-performing, high-efficiency government. You want that to happen, and it's happening. And again, we're not even saying that that crosses the boundary into criminality. They're not even alleging that. If they are alleging that, then they should be alleging that. And they should give us something to measure it against in terms of conduct, but they have not yet. All right, that was Jeff Rosen. Our next witness is Richard Donoghue, and he's the acting deputy AG. Okay, so he's sort of one person beneath Jeffrey Rosen at the AG's office. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about this guy, Jeffrey Clarke. Now, Jeffrey Clarke is also an interesting addition to this entire conversation because Clarke is the guy that Donald Trump was considering to replace Jeffrey Rosen. So when one person is not going to play or is not, performing on the field, you say this running back can't run the ball. They keep fumbling. They've got to go. We're putting a second stringer in. Who is that? Well, Donald Trump was speculating that was going to be this guy, Jeffrey Clarke, former DOJ official, somebody who was a possible Trump attorney general candidate when there was a sort of that string of resignations near the end of his term. So Richard Donoghue is going to tell us about Jeffrey Clarke. Jeffrey Clarke, we'll learn a little bit more about him shortly. He was also the person, his house was raided today by the feds. Perfectly timed and coincided with the J6 hearings, of course. Let's take a look at this witness. This is Mr. Donoghue. He was testifying today.
As we discussed earlier, at the center of Mr. Clarke's plan to undo President Trump's election loss was a letter. Mr. Donoghue, on December 28th, Mr. Clarke emailed you and Mr. Rosen a draft letter that he wanted you to sign and send to Georgia state officials. You testified that this could have, quote, grave constitutional consequences.
All right, so now they're going to say, right, this could have grave constitutional ramifications and social ramifications for the country. Watch.
Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, I had to read both the email and the attached letter twice to make sure I really understood what he was proposing because it was so extreme to me. I had a hard time getting my head around it initially. But I read it and I did understand it for what he intended. And I had to sit down and sort of compose what I thought was an appropriate response. I actually initially went next door to the acting AG's office, but he was not there. We were both on that email. I knew we would both have probably a very similar reaction to it. He was not in his office, so I returned to my office and I sat down to draft a response because I thought it was very important to give a prompt response rejecting this out of hand. There were, in my response, I explained a number of reasons this is not the department's role to suggest or dictate to state legislatures how they should select their electors.
Yep.
But more importantly, this was not based on fact. This was actually contrary to the facts as developed by department investigations over the last several weeks and months. So I responded to that, and for the department to insert itself into the political process this way, I think would have had grave consequences for the country. It may very well have spiraled us into a constitutional crisis, and I wanted to make sure that he understood the gravity of the situation because he didn't seem to really appreciate it.
Yeah, so again, more legal conversations about potential options. And Trump and his people are investigating it. The DOJ is responding back. We can't do this. It's not allowed. But this is all part of reasonable conversation. Now, if you were to separate this out, if you were to take this conduct, okay, Trump's conversation and a lot of this is taking place before January 6th, right? This is all about how to configure or to resolve this issue about if there are two competing slates of electors, what does that process look like? They're getting legal opinions to investigate that claim. And all of it's going forward, and you're allowed to have that conversation. Now, let's go back to the other, we'll wrap up with this. No, let's go to Jeffrey Clarke. We're going to wrap up with this final witness. And Jeffrey Clarke is somebody who today, actually, there was a lot of news flashing around about him this morning. I think this is NBC. Yeah, NBC tells us that federal law enforcement visited the home of this guy, right? Jeffrey Clarke, who sort of came up in the last witness's testimony, Donoghue's testimony. He is the possible replacement because Trump doesn't like his answer. He's going to insert somebody else in there. Feds showed up at his house today. Don't know why. Haven't seen him charged with a crime yet. And he actually responded to this. But NBC was reporting this as of today. They tell us federal law enforcement was at the Virginia home of Jeffrey Clarke, a former Justice Department official who is at the center of Thursday's hearing. Now, this is really the second time this has happened, okay? Before the Select Committee started their hearings the first time, I think that was on a Monday, they arrested the Proud Boys over the weekend, okay? Now, and they talked about the Proud Boys that day. They said it wasn't coincidental. Same thing happened here, okay? They arrested Jeffrey Clarke, or they raided his house, rather, the same day that he's the subject of the hearings, okay? Now, they're saying that this is not coincidental. I don't buy it for a second, right? This is a political propaganda hit job. And so the Select Committee, of course, is colluding with law enforcement and the DOJ to make this have the maximum impact possible, in my humble opinion. A U.S. Attorney's Office spokesman confirmed the activity took place on Wednesday. They had no comment regarding the reason for the activity. News of the law enforcement activity just came over an hour before the House committee investigating the hearing held the hearing and how they used Justice Department to try to overturn the election. Clarke was central to the plot and created a back channel directly to Trump, they say, going over the heads of DOJ superiors, according to the committee. Previous testimony says Clarke strongly believed that the claims from Trump. And I also had some notes. Yeah, I had some notes here. Clarke, meanwhile, has maintained his presence in MAGA world, been on Steve Bannon's podcast trying to raise money, saying he's being targeted for cancellation and the like. Now, Jeffrey Clarke also, I was reading that he actually showed up and testified in front of the hearing. He met with the committee hearing back on January 6th, pled the fifth 100 times during the hearing, right? They asked him a bunch of questions and he just said, nope, I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. I'm invoking over and over and over again. And so he was the subject of this. Now, they're telling us, I think he actually responded to this on Twitter. It was very interesting. So this is his Twitter account. Former U.S. DOJ double assistant AG, admin aficionado, follow me here on True Social, on Getter, blah, blah, blah. Now, he responded to this. Okay, so his house got raided this morning, and this is what he posted on Twitter today. He says, Paul is a very honorable man. He's talking about Paul Clement, who won a major gun case at a law firm. He's in other words, he's not even talking about it at all. Jeff Clarke, who just had his house raided, says Paul's an honorable man. The major American law firm trend is wokeism and representing only one side. The approved progressive Democrat side in all controversies is contributing to the downward spiral of the country. Paul also resigned from King and Spalding over the DOMA defense, the Defense of Marriage Act defense, right? It's not even relevant to what's going on January 6th. It's totally irrelevant. So, like, he's not even worried about it either. And this is weird. We've seen a lot of this happen in these hearings. We sort of saw the same thing with Steve Bannon. Remember when Bannon showed up to court? He's just like, I don't care. Whatever. He's like, the Republicans are going to be back in charge in like 6 months, and I don't even care. Because then Trump's coming back, and he's just going to pardon us all anyways. So whatever. And Jeffrey Clarke is sort of, I think he sort of seems the same way. He's like, well, whatever. And of course, he's not going to comment on an ongoing investigation if he is a potential criminal defendant. So you wouldn't expect him to say anything, but maybe he'd say something like, I vehemently deny all allegations and the Justice Department is barking up the wrong tree. Something like that. I don't know. But it still did seem like he was just kind of skipping over it. Now, in addition to what we know from Mr. Clarke, there's also a story today in the Washington Post saying that we're not even close to being done yet, all right? The January 6th probe, according to them, expands with fresh subpoenas now that are flying out in multiple states. Can you believe this? June 22nd, 2022. Recipients of subpoenas include a state party chairman as officials probe deeper and deeper into Trump efforts to thwart and invalidate electors. Like, it's never going to end, okay? Never going to end. Federal agents investigating the attack on January 6th dropped subpoenas on people in multiple locations, widening the probe of how political activists supporting Trump tried to invalidate electors. Agents conducted court-authorized law enforcement activity on Wednesday morning at different locations. FBI officials confirmed to the Washington Post. All right, so remember, earlier when I was sort of being hyperbolic and I said, these people think that they're going after the Nazis when really they are the Nazis, right? These are the political show trials. They are actually serving subpoenas, and they are actually rounding people up and prosecuting them for crimes, holding them in solitary confinement, putting them up for jury trials in the middle of Washington, D.C., and an entirely rigged jurisdiction where they're going to get convicted 1,000 times out of 1,000. So, right, this is the cascade of effects. These are the consequences. Okay, January 6th is over. There is no insurrection. There never was. There's not going to be an insurrection. The guy with the podium was never going to be in control of our country, okay? It's done. But this is not. Okay, this is continuing on, right? We have a whole additional series of domino effects as a result of this, including now court-authorized law enforcement delivering subpoenas from an illegally constituted fake January 6th Select Committee. And for those who don't know, my goodness, we already almost skipped over this today. Why is this committee illegal? Well, of course. I like to make sure we explain this on basically every show that we cover this garbage. If you look here on the congressional website, you go over there to whatever it is, congress.gov, whatever. It tells you H.R. 503, establishing the Select Committee to investigate the attack on the Capitol. Got that. Look it up. Open it up. Explore. Peel it open. And you read here under Section 2. Section 1 talks about the establishment. This is hereby established. The Select Committee. Oh, great. It's established. Now, how do we fill it once it's established? The composition. The Speaker shall. Do you see that word shall? In law, that has meaning. It means it's mandatory. There is no discretion. Shall means must. Do it. The Speaker shall appoint 13 members to the Select Committee. That's how I read it. It doesn't read may, which is oftentimes used in place of shall. Like the Speaker may do something if it's discretionary. Nope. It's shall. Mandatory. The Speaker has not appointed 13 members to the committee, 5 of whom are not Republicans. This is a House of Representation, a House of Representatives, meaning it's a representative body, and it's not representative at all. It's not even legally in alignment with what the law says it should be. It's illegal. Now, we've already talked about that. I just like to make sure we are constantly piecing that together so we don't lose sight of the illegality here. But this is what the committee is doing anyways. The illegal committee is now sending out court-authorized subpoenas, I guess, because they sent them over from the committee. One was of the home of Brad Carver, Georgia lawyer who allegedly signed a document claiming to be a Trump elector. The other was the Virginia home of Thomas Lane, who worked in Trump's campaign efforts in Arizona, shout out, and New Mexico. The FBI officials did not identify people associated with those addresses, but public records list the homes. Among those who received a subpoena on Wednesday, David Schaefer, chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, served as a Trump elector, and separately, at least some of the would-be Trump electors in Michigan received subpoenas as well. So the fake committee is now going up, rounding up their political enemies, okay? In America, yeah. And they're doing it in the name of democracy and protecting us. All right, it says that according to one person, it was not immediately clear whether that activity was related to a federal probe or to something at a state level. Guessing it's feds, all right? The precise nature of the information being sought also is not clear because this is, very likely happening under the dark of night, right? This is emanating from this select committee. Officials have previously said the Justice Department and the DOJ were examining the issues of false electors. FBI agents delivered a subpoena to Lane, and a video posted online shows Lane handing out paperwork. Here's Shay Moss from the Select Committee. That was her testimony earlier this week. And it just goes on and on and on and on. The hearings on Capitol Hill have increased in public pressure, but senior Justice Department officials have complained the panel is not giving them the needed access to the transcripts of more than 1,000 interviews, private interviews, because they are withholding evidence. Can you believe this? They're withholding evidence. Yeah, it's really disgusting behavior. And you can see exactly why this is so troubling. If the Republicans were doing this, if Donald Trump were doing this, okay, so for anybody, if there are any, who sort of listening to me and just, Rob, you're an idiot out there. Just reverse the script on this, okay? Just flip this. Just put a MAGA hat on every single, just flip it. Make these people Democrats. Flip the whole script. Would you be okay that with this type of behavior, if this is what the Republicans were doing, if the Republicans were investigating their political opponents, and every single person, okay, every one of these people who we've already talked about down here, who have complained about election integrity, people like Hillary Clinton, when she said the election was stolen from her, people like Kamala Harris, who said that Dominion had a lot of problems, right? All the people in these clips, here's Kamala, here's Senator Klobuchar.
All these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling them.
43%. Right? What if the Republicans went and just started arresting all of these people?
Of American voters use voting machines.
Okay, or maybe not arresting them, because that's not happening quite yet, but they're issuing subpoenas, and if they don't show up to court, they get charged with crimes, and then they are getting arrested, right? Like Peter Navarro. So they are actually getting indicted and arrested from this garbage. So just say, what happens if the Republicans do it and they go out and they pick up Kamala and they get Ron Wyden and every one of their supporters and they go after their chief of staff and they go after anybody who voted for them, right? You would be disgusted by that. And guess what? They probably will. And guess what? Can't even be mad at them when they do it. You just have to sit here and say, well, I guess you guys started it. You started your own stupid select committee that was illegally constituted. And now their repercussions are going to come back both ways. And it's pretty reprehensible. But again, the Republicans are going to do it regardless. Honestly, either way, the good news for the everyday citizen like you and I is that both parties are continuing to wreck themselves. And they're continuing, as they're doing it, as they're sort of swinging blows at each other, they're wrecking a lot of the bureaucratic institutions that have been so perverted over the last several hundred years. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I got a very interesting email from a very nice gentleman. I won't use his name, but it starts with an R. I think you probably know who you are. And, he had some good feedback for me. He said, hey, seems like sometimes you kind of like, pro-Republican, like you just kind of, just kind of like carry their water all the time. And it's just like kind of, is that for your audience? And I want to correct the record on that. All right. The Republican Party is about as useless, if not more useless than the Democrats because they lost. Okay. At least the Democrats won. Now they're also incompetent, but at least they are winners. Okay. And at least they beat the Republicans. So I don't really know what the Republicans are doing other than just sort of sitting aside and watching the Democrats wreck themselves. Like the Republicans winning this next election, is it going to be based out of anything good the Republican Party has done? What have they done? Voting for gun bills with Joe? What are they doing? Not doing anything. They're just sort of sitting around waiting for the Democrats to continue to embarrass themselves, and they're doing a great job of that. So I'd like to just make sure that's crystal clear. I think the Republicans are just about as bad as the Republican Party is just about as useless as the Democratic Party. But the point being is that when Republicans do get power, they are going to utilize it, and they should utilize it in the same manner that the Democrats have. Otherwise, they are going to be politically eviscerated, right? They're going to be operating with a subpar set of tools. They're going to be at a disadvantage or a handicap, if you want to put it that way. So it's not conducive to their survival if they don't play that same game. All right. Our last witness before we start to close it out. No, we're not even really close yet. Stephen Engle is here. And he was an assistant attorney general over at the Trump Office of Legal Counsel. And the Office of Legal Counsel is exactly what it sounds like. I mean, it's like an office of lawyers, and they're lawyers to the president, right? And to that executive office. And Stephen Engle was a former assistant attorney general, Office of Legal Counsel. I mean, you know, the government bureaucracy is so big. They have like deputies and assistants and attorney general and office of, so they have like, it's like the Office of the Attorney General, Office of Legal Counsel, building for lawyers represented by esquires who passed the bar and went to law school. It's like, how many times can we explain that this is a law office? Attorney General, Legal Counsel. It's like synonyms. Just a whole, a whole list of synonyms. Anyways, here's Engel now. He was there, and here's what he had to say.
So I want to ask you about two things the president asked you and the department to do. The first is reflected in this email that we're going to put on the screen. The president sent a draft lawsuit to be filed by the department in the Supreme Court. He wanted you, Mr. Rosen, and Mr. Cipollone specifically to review it. You and the department opposed filing it. We see on the screen here that the talking points that you actually drafted on that. So you stated that there is no legal basis to bring this lawsuit. Anyone who thinks otherwise simply doesn't know the law, much less the Supreme Court. Why was this the department's position?
Well, I mean, I think that the memo sort of speaks to this, but essentially this was a draft lawsuit that apparently was prepared by people outside the department. It would be styled as brought by the United States and by the acting Solicitor General as an original jurisdiction matter in the Supreme Court. It was a meritless lawsuit that was not something that the department could or would bring. You know, somebody obviously prepared it, handed it to the president, and he forwarded it on for our review. But that memo explains why the Department of Justice has...
Wow, shocking. You're kidding me. Somebody sent a client a memo or an idea, and they forwarded it to their lawyer, and their lawyer said, not a good idea. Has that ever happened before in this country? Wow. Wow. My goodness. Yeah, I didn't realize it would be sort of insurrection if somebody emailed me something and said, Rob, can we do this in my case? Can we try this? Is this reasonable? I saw this on the internet, or somebody told me about this strategy. Can we try that, Rob? And I say, no. That's not going to work, and here's why. All right? And I thought that was perfectly legitimate. I mean, I think it is, actually, because I'm pretty sure that there are about 1.2 million lawyers every day who do that. Okay, that's called giving legal advice. There's nothing even complicated about this. Trump sent them over a lawsuit to his lawyer at the Office of Legal Counsel, who is his lawyer, and said, what do you think about this? And they said, no, that's not going to work. It's not part of our policy. And dumb Kinzinger here is making this a big problem. Adam, that's what you do with your lawyer. You ask them for advice. You send them stuff. All right. Let's carry on.
Mr. Donoghue said earlier, it doesn't have any standing to bring such a lawsuit. The lawsuit would have been untimely. The states had chosen their electors. The electors had been certified. They'd cast their votes. They'd been sent to Washington, D.C. Neither Georgia nor any of the other states on December 28th or whenever this was in a position to change those votes. Essentially, the election had happened. The only thing that hadn't happened was the formal counting of the votes. And so obviously, the person who drafted this lawsuit didn't really understand, in my view, the law and or how the Supreme Court works or the Department of Justice. So it was just not something we were going to do. And the acting Attorney General asked me to prepare a memo with talking points so that he could explain our reasons when he spoke with the president about this.
So would you say it was an unusual request?
Wow.
It was certainly you said the request that the department file a lawsuit from drafted by outside lawyers was certainly an unusual request.
Yeah, really unusual. Yeah, it's unusual. And they are drafting memos. While other lawyers are drafting, the Office of Legal Counsel is drafting memos. Holy moly. That sounds like Donald Trump was asking them to do something crazy. One of the first things they have you do in law school, at least where I went, there was a class called, I can't even remember what it was, but it was all about that, right? How to research the law and how to write a memo and how not to, embarrass yourself in front of a partner or somebody else or in front of a judge, right? Some formal structure. That's what lawyers do, is they write memos and they give opinions and they give legal advice. Everything that we saw here was all that. That's all Trump and his people communicating with the DOJ and the Office of Legal Counsel about what to do in the cases. Okay. Not shocking, not even complicated. And apparently that's the end of the world. So Liz Cheney then comes out and gives us a little bit of a closing argument. And before we get to her, yeah, I think we're doing good here. We're doing good. All right. So this is Liz Cheney now. She's going to give us a closing argument. Let's listen to her. And then we've got some reaction from the press. Then we'll get to your questions, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Here is Liz Cheney.
And let me also today make a broader statement to millions of Americans who put their trust in Donald Trump. In these hearings so far, you've heard from more than a dozen Republicans who've told you what actually happened in the weeks before January 6th. You will hear from more in the hearings to come.
More?
Several of them served Donald Trump and his administration. Others in his campaign. Others have been conservative Republicans for their entire careers. It can be difficult to accept that President Trump abused your trust, that he deceived you.
Wake up, America. You're too stupid to realize that Donald Trump is taking advantage of you. And if you just listen to us, okay, if you just, opened your eyeballs a little bit, then you would know that he is a bad hombre, isn't he? Let's listen to Liz.
It can be difficult to accept that President Trump abused your trust, that he deceived you. Many will invent excuses to ignore.
They are so condescending to people. You are too dumb to know better.
That fact. But that is a fact. I wish it weren't true, but it is.
Yeah, I guess. All right. I guess that's it, because Liz Cheney said so. So, man, well, it's good. It's good to know how stupid of a person I am. Thank you, Liz, for reminding me that I've had the wool pulled over my eyes for so long and I couldn't really think for myself. Donald Trump, he's just a little sneaky, isn't he? He just was able to sneak this one right through. Fooled me for all these years. Ugh. What's that saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, not going to fool me again. Don't forget that one. And here is reaction from the media. Now, Chuck Todd is out there, and he was asking this just brilliant woman. Now, this woman is just outstanding. And here is what her name is. Her name is Betsy Woodruff Swan. Okay. She's over from Politico, and she's the national correspondent over there. And she has been studying this J6 thing for a long time. And I didn't know about this, but NBC News, apparently they've got this, one of the online streaming, whatever. And so they were doing one of their streaming shows, and they're all trying to get into this game now. And it's refreshing to hear her speak. Let's listen to what she had to say, because it's just really, really, really quite good. Now, here she is, Chuck Todd. This came over from the Washington Examiner. And this is the title of the show, right? Nobody gives a bleep about January 6th. Right, here she is. And poor Chuck Todd, this is not the answer that he wanted.
Let me pivot a little bit to January 6th, because Quinnipiac asked a terrific poll question. And I definitely plan to get our folks to steal it.
Yeah,
they asked whether, in 2020, do you believe Donald Trump truly believed there was voter fraud, or do you believe he deliberately wanted to spread false information? So the overall number is 48-43 in favor. More people think he was deliberately spreading false information than not.
Okay, so this is a good poll. Now, this is fun because truly believe there was voter fraud, right? Now, this goes to that intent. If Donald Trump really believed that there was frogs running around our election, then that might make people think that he's more legitimate in doing what he did. Right. But if he was deliberately spreading false information, then you say, well, that's not cool. Right. That's irresponsible. You're not allowed to do that. Same type of analogy would take place in, any other area of law. Of course, this is not happening in a regular area of law. This is happening in a congressional kangaroo court. But the point is that this goes towards that intent, right? The mens rea, the guilty mind. you know, oftentimes, like a murder is a pretty good example of this. The difference between a murder charge and a manslaughter charge, or, you know, in your state, a negligent homicide or whatever it is, often is intent. You know, did you intend to kill that person or not? So it can really be the difference between, you know, like a malicious, a forethought murder. You're waking up, you want to go kill somebody intentionally, and it's an accident, genuinely an accident, right? Didn't mean that to happen. And you different between maybe a life sentence and 5 to 7. Okay. Intent. So it's very important. And here they're asking about this poll. And, you know, these are actually kind of closer than I think that maybe they're comfortable with, right? I would actually think that the number, the 43 seems a little bit low to me, right? I think a lot of people, like I personally think Donald Trump thinks that through his bones. Okay. I don't think there's a cell in his body that doesn't believe that to his core. Am I wrong on that? Like Donald Trump believes, like, where do you fall on this on the chat? You know, I mean, I think it's got to be like, anybody think he doesn't believe that he won that? All right. She goes on. Now, very important question. And here is how she follows up.
Now, let me take you to the party divides. Among Democrats, only 7% thought he was doing it because he really believed it. 86% believed he was spreading false information on purpose. Numbers almost completely flipped among Republicans. 77% believing he believed it, just 17. Which brings me to the all-important question, Betsy. Does the January 6th hearing break through at all? Is this more proof it does not?
Okay, so the question is, does the January 6th committee break through at all? Because based on what we've seen, the parties are so divided, right? There's like, in other words, the people who think Donald Trump is a misinformation person, who is an insurrectionist, they're like way over there on that side of the party. And the other people who don't, they're over there, and they are not dancing together, okay? So you can put whatever music on you want. You could play the January 6th on repeat, play the Beach Boys. Nobody's dancing, all right? This thing is just going to be a dead party no matter what you do. Is that what you're telling me here, woman?
I don't think it does. I've talked to 2 separate Democratic members of Congress in the last couple of weeks about January 6th. Obviously can't say who. And both of them have said offhandedly, nobody gives a bleep about January 6th when they're talking about their districts and the way that elections play out.
Let's hear that again.
Hearing breakthrough at all? Is this more proof it does not?
I don't think it does. I've talked to 2 separate Democratic members of Congress in the last couple of weeks about January 6th. Obviously can't say who. And both of them have said offhandedly, nobody gives a bleep about January 6th when they're talking about their districts and the way that elections play out. The reality is, obviously, it's a very important issue. Obviously, like I've been covering this nonstop for the last year. It's important. It's a key part of understanding American history and the democratic trajectory that this country is on. It is also true at the same time, and not at all contradictory, that it's not a top-tier voting issue for people who are figuring out who they're going to support during the midterms. Top-tier issues are material concerns. How are people paying their mortgages? How much does it cost to get milk and bread? How much does it cost to get gas? Do these hearings result in different electoral outcomes for Democrats? I have yet to see any actual evidence that they do.
Very quickly, my measurement.
Oh man, was that brutal or what? Like she just like smashed the hopes of everybody on the left. Oh my goodness. It's just like brutal. Wow. So yeah, I guess that, well, there you have it. She's talking to even Democrats in Congress, and even them, they can't even piece this together. Nobody gives a bleep about these stupid hearings. And did you hear what she said? It's very important for American history. I mean, we have to know this, and we got to pay attention on it. So like, she knows her audience, right? She's speaking to them. Don't worry, okay? I'm still going to be covering this. I know you people are going to freak out if you think it's not important. This is the biggest, most consequential event in American history since the Civil War, according to Joe Biden. I didn't say that. He did. And now, I mean, look at that face. She just is like, this is terrible. This is horrible. And I'm grateful for her. I mean, that's some nice honesty. That's some good reporting there. And her name, if you want to follow her, is Betsy Woodruff Swan, Politico. Amazing. Oh, just amazing. All right. And so that, my friends, is, I think, it for what we've got here. Now, the show's a little bit shorter, and the reason being is because right after the program, this live stream is going to forward you right into the next premiere, which is a pre-recorded video that I did on the Supreme Court case that covers the new gun ruling, right? I read through that today. It's about a 40-minute video. And so as soon as this live stream is over, it's going to forward you right over there, and I'm going to have it start right after we end. So if you want to watch that, I do. It's about 40 minutes. It's a breakdown of the new opinion brewing, and then it's also it has Biden's reaction and Kathy Hochul's reaction. So you can stick around if you want to watch that, or come on back. And as soon as we're done here, I'll turn that one on. But for now, let's take a look and see what you have to say about all of these stories and more. I saw a couple super chats come in. Thank you for your support there, my friends. And I am opening up. What did I do here? I am going to jump into the super chats, and then we're going to jump into locals right after that. Okay, so Dieter Andrew is here. Says, when does Juicy Smollett testify? Well, Juicy Smollett, his trial's over. He got convicted, right? And he's going to prison. I think we covered most of that, right? He got sentenced, didn't he? I haven't taken a good look at the Jussie Smollett case in a long time. The juiciest of all the juicies. Yeah, I don't remember where we're at with him. Is he in custody? I don't know. Good to see you, Dieter. Bear Ashby is here. He's got a couple of these. Says Roe versus Wade will be overturned. Given back to the states. Half the states will make abortion legal. That's government. Yeah, there are some states, like I think Utah has, they've got these, they call them trigger laws, I think to be sort of pejorative, that will automatically come into play as soon as the opinion drops. And many people are thinking that is tomorrow, right? That the Roe versus Wade opinion comes out tomorrow, and they are bracing for impact. Thank you for that, Bear Ashby. Another one from Bear Ashby says, where would this crap show be without Holly Weird? And they are weird. You know, the Zelensky Ben Stiller thing, I don't know if you watched that video. It is a weird video. And I'm not just saying that because it's Hollywood, right? Like, I don't have any problems with Ben Stiller. Like, I like his movies. Tropic Thunder was funny. He's had some funny stuff. And, okay, I don't sort of worship Hollywood or really pay much attention to it. But it's weird. The video with him was really, really weird. He goes and he meets with Zelensky, and he's just like drooling, fawning over this guy. And Zelensky, I think, is even a little bit weirded out. Like, when somebody's like looking at you like just a little too long, a little bit too intensely. It's like break that eye contact. Like, just like look away it's getting weird. That was Ben Stiller in Ukraine, which apparently is the center piece of World War III. Weird stuff going on. So that was from Bear Ashby. Just Cause is in the house, and he says, Benny sounds like Foghorn Leghorn. LOL from Just Cause. It's good to see you, Just Cause, who's moderating it up in there along with K-Bean and Vienticus Prime. And I saw Zulu's in the house earlier. There's Zulu. Yeah, there's Zulu. And we have Elaine Smith. Elaine Smith says, I can't read that, Elaine Smith. I can't read that. It's talking about the 2020 election. But my YouTube censor, what did he bring? I think he has a katana today. Yeah, he has a katana. He's over there. He's like, careful. He's talking to you, Elaine. He's like, he sees it. He can see everything that's going on here. So I can't read it. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it, Elaine. Chris Wolney says, great quote from W, Rob. Liz is a puppet. Did I get that right? Did I get that W quote right? He said that was it, right? Not going to fool me again. Oh my gosh, poor W. You kind of missed W. I mean, at least our inflation levels weren't at 12%. Oh, what a mess. Those were the super chats over from our friends on YouTube. And I'm very grateful for those. I think I've told you this before, my friends, but every single stinking time that we finish up a live stream here, YouTube demonetizes the video and they don't remonetize it until about 24 to 48 hours after the show is over. And then what does that mean? Well, nobody's interested in watching that video anymore because typically the next show, at least, or the next 2 shows are already in the can. So everybody's moved on to the next show, right? And then they turn it back on, and I say that's perfect. Nobody's going to watch a week show old, a show that's 2 or 3 days or a week old. So thank you for your super chats. Thank you for your super thanks. Thank you for becoming a member at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or here on YouTube. Links are in the description below. Thank you. In my opinion, the left is making a mockery, this is from Jeremy, of congressional hearings. I can't remember a time when more people were clearly lacking any sense of rationality. Says our government representatives have been proven ineffective and a complete waste of our tax dollars. I couldn't agree with this more, JC. If this was a company, okay, like if Amazon had this performance, you would never use them again. If you went to your grocery store and they performed like the government did, you would never go there again. But we can't leave. Starting in 2017, a certain someone solved more problems in the world than anyone else in history. Fast forward to the present, and elected officials have done all they can to destroy everything that was good and makes them all look like fools while telling themselves they're doing something useful. That's a good call. Good comment from JC the Music Man. Jeremy is in the house. Hey, there it is. Vientikis is here. Here's George Bush. Let's play this one.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once.
Fool me once.
Shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
That's right, baby. Oh, George Bush. You fool me. Not going to fool me again. I love it. All right. So thank you, Vientikis, for sharing that with us. Another one from V. So he says, so one team does something to hurt the other party, then the other party does the same thing in revenge and does something a little worse. Meanwhile, the pendulum swings more and more violently each time, damaging the average person in the process. Seems like that's the whole point of this back and forth. None of them suffer. We do. Vientikis, brilliant. Yeah, nailed that one. Got that one. That's beautifully written too. That is a nice statement, and it's true. It is true. You know, I was listening to some of the Federal Reserve garbage, and somebody was saying on Twitter that the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy is very important to help ensure an equal distribution of wealth and to ensure that the middle class is not being extorted. It's like, do you feel that? Do you feel that every time the Fed acts, they're doing something that helps you, America? I mean, we saw in real time, right? You remember in real time watching Zuckerberg and Bezos and all of the tech bros get richer and richer, go from 50 billion to 150 billion, right? And they're not even, you know, they're yes, the richest people in the world, but they don't control the banks and the money flows, right? They're still trading in currency that other people really are controlling. Okay. So, you know, who really got rich? It wasn't us, right? We all are getting extorted. The bank money that is in our account, it's worth less every day. And it's not going to stop. So I agree with you here, Vientikis. We all do get hurt. I think the answer, though, you know, even though these two parties are sort of like wrecking balls, the American people are going to get tired of this, and they're going to realize that the biggest problem in their lives, our lives, is the government, right? There's nobody else reaches their hand into our bank accounts and takes the money out of it in the form of inflation or in the form of mandatory taxation, where that money goes into the dumpster every year, right? So when you add it all up, we're sort of working 50+% of our lives for other people, for the government. And when people start to realize that that is the cancer, right? It's not the people who get overly, you know, excited at a political rally that turns into a riot. Okay, that's not the biggest problem in the world. The J6ers versus the federal government in terms of who is taking more away from you and me on a daily basis, is it even a question? All right. So, okay. Tessa Michelle is here. Says all oppressive political ideologies are all sister ideologies. Communism, fascism, socialism, feminism, transism, Marxism, despotism, totalitarianism, among others, are all sister ideologies. They all have the same goal, power. They share the same core values. They employ the same strategies. They use the same tactics. That is why the tactics of the January 6th committee seem so familiar. all oppressive ideologies are systematic and predictable. They all function the same way. God, another great comment from Tesha Michelle. Man, good stuff here today. Really, really good. Here from former, and look, I agree. I guess I don't even have a response to that. I completely agree with that. I completely agree, right? You look at it and it just feels gross. And even Chuck Todd, I mean, NBC and many others are all making those same arguments. They're all saying, yesterday we played the clip. How does this committee avoid confirmation bias? Chuck Todd asked of the guest, and the guest is like, well, they don't really. I mean, this is a whole hearing of confirmation bias. So yeah. And I think you're exactly right. Now people can feel it and it wrecks their legitimacy, and they're doing more harm to themselves than they are doing good. I'm not sure why they're doing it. Former LEO says, how about a blanket Fifth Amendment claim for a response to blanket subpoenas? Yeah, it's not a bad idea. If we had, I think, a little bit more, I'm not sure who would really be responsible for sort of invoking something like that. But let's say you could theorize where there might be sort of a split between the courts. Let's say, for example, okay, these subpoenas go over to the DC Circuit. The DC Circuit says, we're going to subpoena a bunch of people in Texas. Texas now says, we're pretty tired of all these garbage subpoenas coming out of DC. We're not going to enforce them, right? The federal courts in DC say, nope, no jurisdiction anymore. Don't come talk to our citizens. Not enforceable. What if something like that happens? Right? It's a breakdown of the judicial system. Yeah, it is a constitutional crisis. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if the system is so broken that it needs repair, but nobody's willing to actually repair it, well, then we have to look at alternatives. We got to talk about breaking it and rebuilding it in a way that actually is in alignment with the Constitution, not allowing it to function in a way that is not. TOS Forever says, we need to investigate how much each person involved in this J6 is getting paid out from the committee by paid out taxes. Yeah, it's a lot of money. I know hundreds of thousands of dollars are going towards political salaries. This one came in from Jeff Rook. He says, Rob, I'll compare our current world to multiplayer games, which I like to do that, actually. I think it's sort of a good way to analogize. You can use a lot of the technical language to talk about what's going on in the real world. When it's clear someone's cheating, everyone eventually leaves the server and goes off to find a server where the game is being played as intended. See how good this is? You seem quite good at keeping your head in the game, even as individuals and groups twist the game mechanics to suit their needs. Do you have any recommendations for those who may want to stop playing simply because the game is no longer the one they signed up for? Do you have any tips for someone trying to keep their head in what feels like a rigged game? I do, actually, yeah. Holy moly, my goodness, this is a great comment. I do, actually, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, I feel this way a lot, if I can be honest with you. You know, the world is a confusing place, and the world is not really built for people who want to, you know, sort of carve their own groove in the wood, who want to, you know, mark their own trail. It's really built for a lot of people who just, you know, if you kind of go along, if you put the mask on and you stay in your home and you just follow the rules, things are kind of easier for you, right? They're made that way. Take the jab, put the mask on, you can fly a plane. Take the jab, put the mask on, you can go to work, right? It's encouraging people to take the path of the least resistance. And I have never obviously been that person, okay? I'm a defense lawyer. My whole life, I've had a problem with authority. I don't like it at all. That being said, okay, a big part of my draw, a big part of the pressure that I felt in life, not a draw, a pressure at my back has been to conform. You know, be a lawyer, be a doctor, go to college, go to law school, right? You know, all of these things were sort of things that maybe wouldn't have been my first choice if I had been a little bit more free, like a muffin coming out of the muffin pan to explore a little bit, right? But then society, even now, right? Even when I started doing YouTube, I had a lot of lawyers, I had a lot of people that didn't like how this muffin was popping up out of the pan and they wanted to smash it back in there. There are still people out there that do that, and I expect there's going to be many, many more. Now, how do you navigate that world when you want to go and be that muffin that goes free when it comes out of the pan versus somebody who is sort of crammed in there and in tight quarters and living your life in somebody else's frame? It's complicated, my friend, and it takes a lot of work, and I don't think it ever ends. I think it's a constant process of exploration. It's sort of like what we talked about with Ray Dalio yesterday, evolving well, trying a lot of things, failing quickly, making adjustments, trying to find what your purpose and your passion is, finding stuff that you're in sync with. My man, we're going to talk about a lot of this next week on our member mindset mastermind. And it's going to be a lot of fun because I really spend a lot of time dissecting this for myself. And I hope that I have some stuff to share with you that is valuable. I mean, I'm a recovered alcoholic. I mean, I've been spending years trying to untangle the mess in my own mind, right? And I've had my brother pass away from suicide, and I've had a lot of trials and tribulations in life. And so I have found myself at the bottom of a pit many, many times trying to figure out what's the point? This whole game is rigged. Why are we even playing this stupid game? There are good reasons to do it. And really, the simplest answer that I have found is to be of service to other people, and it's try to find your purpose in life and to share that with others. And it's not something that you read a book and it just happens, okay? I got a lot of lifetime ahead of me of figuring it out, and I'm very excited about it. It is a journey, and I'm grateful that you're here asking these questions, Jeff. I really mean it. I hope you join us next week because I think there's some good stuff in there. We have another one from C. Rose. Says, Rob, why would you need a pardon when the J6 committee will totally provide you with your constitutional due process rights? It's a great question. Thank you for reminding me about that, C. Rose. Yeah, good question. I don't know. That's right. I mean, you're right. They are following the Constitution. So, P.S. And you mentioned it. I think you said Sean Penn, he's been giving these clowns acting lessons. I don't think it's worked. And you just mentioned it. Plus, you think Sean Penn has been giving these clowns acting lessons questions. I don't think it's worked. No, I don't think so at all. And he says LARW PPS, legal analysis, research, and writing, or some variation. That's what it was. Yeah. C. Rose is in law school. He says it's a class apparently only some students are required to take to learn how to write memos and appellate briefs. Yeah, I had to take it. We had to take it. I think it was my first semester, my second semester. C. Rose is wrapping up law school. And yeah, it's that class. Like you have to write memos. So the J6 committee was saying that Trump's lawyers in the Office of Legal Counsel were writing him memos. Oh my gosh. Somebody call the Insurrection police. The Antikiss is here. Rob, do you like the advertisement I just got when refreshing the video? Oh, Uncivil Law is advertising on our channel, I think is what he's saying. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So I think in YouTube, you can actually, advertise your channel on other people's channels so that you can draw their viewers over to your channel, which is fun. And I support that. Okay. I support Uncivil Law. He's a very good content creator. He works very hard and he covers a lot of stuff. And plus, look at the cowboy hat, by the way. So go over to Uncivil Law's channel and hit that subscribe button, baby. And don't forget to ring the bell so that you don't miss any episodes. And if you happen to watch anything, give it a like and a thumbs up. That's pretty funny, though. It's not a bad idea, actually. I mean, I've thought about this idea, right? What if you just advertise, this channel on a bunch of other LawTube channels and you say, hey, you like this content, why don't you come over here and check out our content, So shout out to Uncivil Law. Please go support his channel. Good guy. I really love everybody on LawTube. I think that they're doing America a service, right? By getting people unplugged from the mainstream sources and getting varied opinions on the internet. So I support LawTube. I support more lawyers getting on the internet and making their voices heard. I think it's good for all. Former LEO says, you might want to go over the Miranda ruling in civil litigations. I don't even know what that is, former LEO. I might have to learn about it first. I don't know what that is. Is that new? I mean, I don't know. Vientikis says, okay, here it says, hey, hold on a minute. Oh, here, I can answer this. He says, you don't have to read this one out loud, but what happened to the camera cap? He says, you know, when you put your hand on the end here, it's stinking weird, you weirdo. Try using that plastic sound post I sent you. I made it to either hang up the screw holes in the back. Yeah, the sound, so Viantic has the Watching the Watchers sound post that will clip onto like a wooden post. I think you 3D printed that, right? Pound the gavel on or replace the black cap just to make things a little bit more interesting. So Viantic, he doesn't like when I do the hand cap. The problem, V, is that I have to do it because I have a new lens on here that doesn't allow me to put a cap on it. Okay, so it actually has some stuff that blocks the light from coming in on the sides, right? And so I can't cap that. So I could probably like I can't do it. So what's the best solution I got? It's the best solution I got. But it is a little bit weird, but that's just how it's going to be until I come up with a better solution. I don't know what to say. Sorry about it. Former LEO says, what was the over-under on sissy pants crying during the J6 joke? I don't know that we established an over-under, to be honest. I think it was just, I thought it was going to be a pretty high percentage. I was thinking like 80, 90%, but I'm not sure that he broke tears. I could have been wrong on that. They may not have put it in the teleprompter, you know, like insert tears. Maybe it missed it. I don't know. Mr. MVP says, what a great day for more panic in DC. Peaceful panic. One of Justice Thomas' quotes really hit the Bidens hard and heavy. It was from Chief Justice Taney in 1857. He posted it today. Mr. MVP, I would say, is the Mr. MVP of posts over on our locals channel. Mr. MVP and Bonnie and Heather, we got so many people posting amazing stories over there. It is a lot of fun. Vianticus posts a lot too. Yeah, I mean, it really is a lot of fun. It's a good community. And I spend some time, I was sort of scrolling through some of these. And we, as of late, what we've been doing is morning videos. So every morning I sort of do these little walks around downtown Phoenix, and we just share some of those. So like here is one of the posts. And if you're a member on YouTube, so if you're Stace on the Case, if you're Zulu Zite, who's in the house, right, they're chatting away and they get these same videos on YouTube. But this is sort of what it looks like. It's kind of just me walking around downtown in the morning. You're gonna die. Oh, that's a nice statement. You're going to die, right? Okay. That's what we talk about, but it is fun. This one's about 20 minutes or so. And we just kind of go through some of the headlines of the day, and it's a way to carry on the conversation after the show takes place. And if you're a member on YouTube or on locals, it does go a long way to support the work that we do here. And I very much appreciate it. And I think we had a couple super chats come in. One came in from Elaine Smith, says, what is Q? Who is Q, and when did this start? That was from Elaine Smith. Well, Q, like the QAnon, remember QAnon? QAnon was that, I don't know what that was, but maybe a government intelligence operation. Maybe it was an actual insider. I don't know what it was, but it was, I think, a group of people who had a belief that certain things were going to happen. And then we had the QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley, okay, who was there, and he got turned into a big thing. And I don't know when it started, though. I mean, I didn't pay a ton of attention to it. I think it was a 4chan thing or an 8chan thing. It was one of those Chan things. Good question, Elaine. I'm sure there's a Wikipedia article about it or something. Carrie Mache says, what is your first choice for your life, Rob? What is your first choice for your life, Rob? Well, I don't really know what that question is getting at. But I think, Carrie, you're asking about values, maybe? Freedom is my operational value. If I had to boil it down to one word, it would be freedom. Operationally, I like to think about myself as helping people to maximize their freedom of body, mind, and spirit in many different ways. And I think that's probably the first compass. The 11th tradition, my dear friend, read it, is greater than reading it. Yeah, the 11th tradition. So maybe now I'm thinking you're talking some AA stuff. I don't know. Very curious. Freddie Martin says, we love you, Rob. Save the United States. Well, thank you, Freddie. I love you back. And I really do mean it. I have a ton of fun with you guys and gals. Okay. I want to be very inclusive here. And if you have trouble picking one of those, You're also welcome here, okay? We're very inclusive. Now, my friends, that is it for us for the day. Thank you very much for all of those questions and all of the comments. Thank you for joining in on the YouTube chats. Chris Wolney is here, says J6 is not investigating Q. That tells you something. With a super chat from Chris Wolney, they're not investigating a lot of things, and I think that does tell us a lot. And thank you for sending that one here in at the last minute there, Chris. Lean's in the house. Don Shivley's in the house. Shout out to Mads, to Paul, to Gary Millard, Susan H. We have Howard Johnson. Cookie Mom is in the house. Talbert's mom is here as well. They're all chatting over on YouTube. I'm seeing here on Locals, Tremendous, JC the Music Man. He says, we love you, Rob. I love you back, Jeremy. I really do. And Bonnie Speck is here saying we've got a great community. I think that's true as well, Vientikis. And over on Rumble, we got shout outs to Anything, member of the public are there. We have Soul Warrior Vibe in the house, and they're chatting away with Blue Bunny and Holland Ranch and Soul Wound over on our Rumble chat. And so we're spending time on all the different platforms, and I appreciate you. Carrie Mache says law. She said, you said law was not your first choice. So I wondered what it was. Well, I'm not sure that I would say that it wasn't like I wouldn't say that law wasn't my first choice, but I don't know that if I wasn't sort of pushed to law or encouraged to law, that I would have naturally gone there. I think I would have. I mean, I think that what I'm doing now is really what I am supposed to be doing. I think law is a very good fit for me. I think that speaking and teaching and deciphering complex problems is a good fit for me. Like, I think that I was probably going to find a skill stack or a career or a purpose that was in alignment with a lot of the same things that I'm doing now. But there was other stuff that I was working on before law school. Like I had some business ideas and some online website ideas and some stuff that, I think could have been fun to explore, but law school felt like the safe choice, right? Law school felt like I better just go get a law degree and get a job somewhere. And it was the safe choice. And that's what I was doing until I decided, or was lucky enough, fortunate enough to sort of expand outside of the muffin pan. And that has led to what we're doing now and spending time together doing here. So, I may have gone a different career and may have still ended up on YouTube, who knows? But my point is that I think that question was about, the rigors of finding yourself in the world that oftentimes wants to box you in. And I was boxed in, and I went into a safe choice down a safe path, which was law. And then I was able to find sort of a little bit more of alignment with my purpose and explore out from there. And I don't think that's a bad strategy, right? You have something safe and then you have something purposeful. And the ideal is that you mash those two together. You find something that will fit both of those worlds. And I really hope that everybody can find that. I mean, I really mean that. And I work hard at our office with our team. I tell everybody at our team, I want you to feel fulfilled and have purpose and feel like you're doing good, meaningful work and helping people. And if you don't feel that way at our office, you can go be unhappy somewhere else, and that's the kind of culture that I want to be a part of. And we're building that right now at our law firm every day. And we're having a lot of fun doing that. But that, my friends, is it for the show for the day. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to jump right over into the premiere, and the premiere is going to be scheduled, I think, in, 15 minutes, actually. So as soon as we end up here, it's going to forward you over there, and then it will start in about 15 minutes. And before we close up shop, I want to wrap up with this. Quick reminder that next week we do have our mastermind. It's going to be Thursday, June 30th. This is for members, whether you're a member on YouTube or a member on Locals. You're going to get the private link. It's going to be a private live stream, an unlisted stream. So it's going to be a smaller group. It's going to be at 12:30 p.m. Pacific, which means it's 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And depending on how long we go, there may or may not be a live show that day. I don't know. I'm planning on a live show that day, but there may not be because of this. So Thursday, June 30th, 12:30, it's going to be the member mastermind. And I have an entire mind map that sort of looks like this, talking about crypto and world affairs and books and different filters and different practices that I find useful and different frameworks that I've incorporated from all of my years of coaching exploring this. And I do spend a lot of time in coaching. I spend a ton of resources on self-development because it's basically what I do, right? I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I have a business. I have a mission. I have a purpose that I really want to go tackle right now. And I've got a lot of energy to do it. And I've got a lot of coaching and a lot of stuff that I study. And I want to share that with you. And I hope you come and join us on Thursday next week to do so. Big spotlight shout outs to Dr. EMB, David B3, and Chris Romero. These are people who decide to support the work that we do here with a little extra. And of course, I like to give them some extra real estate on the screen at the end of the show. And so these are just people who are ultra supporters. If you join at the Spotlight member on YouTube or an equivalent amount on Locals, then you'll get a Spotlight supporter badge location right here on the screen. It's kind of just a way to share some screen real estate with you, my friends, and supporters, really, rather than, advertising for some useless product that I don't even like. You can put a link to a website. You can put a logo on there, whatever it is you want. If you don't want to support the show anymore, you just cancel your support and I'll just pull you off the Spotlight, right? It's just sharing a little bit of real estate rather than advertising some product. And it's, I think, a way that kind of could be fun, could turn into a big can of worms and a big problem, but it's fun for now. Here we can see this is the place to join our communities, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. YouTube, click the join button right next to the subscribe button. Don't forget about our law firm, the R&R Law Group, free case evaluations for good people in Arizona facing criminal charges. And of course, big thank yous and final shout outs to the mods who keep the fort down. We've got here today Vienticus Prime, K-Beans in the house, Zulu, and Just Cause, all keeping things on track in the chat. And I, of course, appreciate all of you and your tremendous support. But that, my friends, is it for the day. You're going to get the hand in the camera again. Sorry, V. Just how it has to be. But that's it for me for the day. We will be back here again tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope that you join us there. Vienticus says, add Geomancy games. I will. I definitely will. And that, my friends, is it. Have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.